Now, to talk more about the European election, I'm joined from Barcelona by Adriano Bosoni. He's the senior Europe analyst for Stratfor. Welcome to our show, sir. I want to begin by asking you about this election. First of all, we saw reports about how divisive this election could be, and now the historic turnout in many countries, the highest turnout in many years.
Yeah, these are important elections for at least three reasons. First, because the European Parliament is a co-legislator in the European Union and is in charge of approving laws in many areas, from energy to migration to the big EU budget. Also, this is an important election because the composition of the European Parliament will influence the process to appoint the next president of the European Commission. Let's keep in mind that the president of the Commission has to be endorsed by the Parliament. And the third reason why this is an important election is because even though it's technically an election about EU issues, it will also have an impact at the national level in many countries. We are looking for the popularity of the government in Italy, the stability of the Grand Coalition in Germany, the popularity of Emmanuel Macron's reforms in France. So it will have national implications in addition to the European implications.
Well, Adriano, there are obviously many grounds to cover. Let's begin with the UK, the Brexit. How do you think the competition between pro-Brexit parties and anti-Brexit parties will impact the future of Brexit?
The election, which is an election that was not planned and it should not happen, will probably show that a party with a clear pro-Brexit message, the Brexit party, will perform strongly, which will send a message to the two mainstream parties, Labour and the Conservatives, that they should get their act together and they should have a clearer position on Brexit. This will generate a big debate. Labour will debate whether or not to end the ambiguity on the issue of holding a second referendum. A strong performance by the Brexit party could convince hardliners within the Conservative Party that they have to take a stronger, harder position on Brexit, and the next British Prime Minister could be a hardliner who is more willing to support a hard Brexit than the outgoing Prime Minister Theresa May was.
Also, we saw that across the continent, right-wing nationalist parties have generated a coordinated challenge to the center-right and center-left parties. What are their chances this time around?
I would say that to some degree we have seen coordination. There is one big Eurosceptic party that will be led by Italy's Lega and by France's National Rally, but at the same time there are other left-wing, Eurosceptic parties that belong to other groups. So even if overall the popularity of Eurosceptic nationalist parties has improved and they will gain some extra seats in the European Parliament, they will probably not be strong enough or united enough to substantially influence the legislative process in the Parliament.
Well, we saw that some parties are pro-European. They're not necessarily Eurosceptic, but they're also pro-EU reform. The leader of a major party called the Alliance of Democrats and Liberals for Europe, he warned that without reform, the European Union would die from within. Do you agree with that assessment?
What we will see is that these elections will send a very strong message to the two mainstream parties, to the mainstream center-right and the mainstream center-left party, which, if the projections are correct, will no longer be in control of the parliament. And they will have to reach out to smaller parties which will become more influential, probably the Liberals, potentially the Greens, and this means that they will have to take into consideration other views, other proposals. They will have to compromise. They will have to reach out to these smaller parties and listen to them. And this will also apply to the European Commission, which every time that it comes up with a proposal for legislation, they have to take into consideration the views of parties which used to be quite irrelevant, but in the future parliament will play a bigger role.
Adriano Bosoni from Barcelona, thanks so much for your insight.